Thank you for watching. I'm Jamai Hakwani. I have U.S. Senate candidate Alan Wade for the next half hour joining me for the conversation. So like I said earlier, it's a conversation, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jamai.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are you feeling about the campaign so far? I know you just got in the race. When was it that you made the decision to run?
We made the decision to run right before the holidays and opted to make it formal in January. So January the 9th, I've announced, and I'm reflecting back, it seems like it was a long time ago, but in truth, it's only been, 7, going on 8 months.
Yeah,
but the campaign is more over than what's left. I mean, it's a 300-day campaign from the 9th of January to the 4th of November.
So it wasn't a last-minute decision. It was something that you kind of thought about for a little while. But
well, I agonized over this throughout most of 2013, and in all honesty, there were days when I'd say, I don't want to do this, simply because I have an appreciation for what candidates go through and what they have to endure, both they and their families, to run for public office, particularly at a more higher profile race.
Correct.
I've done that once. It was an experience. I never thought I'd do it again. But for a lot of reasons that compelled me, ultimately I made the decision to run this time. And that, but it weighed heavily on me as to whether to do it or not to do it. Ultimately, I pulled the trigger.
And it's well on the way there. You got a few more days left here. And I think this last chapter goes really well. I mean, really quick. I mean, at least that's what most candidates tell me. It goes by really quick from September on. Labor Day on, it's like, wow, it's almost over. So, but and it gets heated right around that time. It's political. So, I'm sure you're all aware of that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's the issues out there as far as you're running for U.S. Senate. So naturally, you're going to be dealing with a lot of foreign stuff, international stuff. Talk about the Middle East a little bit, having to do with ISIL group, the jihadist group took over the Middle East. Practically, they're carving out a little state there. And I just want to get your opinion. That way, the viewers know what your opinion on there is and stuff. Well financed, plenty of money. This is part of the area that you're familiar with because you were there, Second Gulf War. What we're looking at is a state forming there, and according to the current administration, they think it's going to be a very long time before they're able to isolate them and get rid of them. It's not something easy that could be achieved at this point, correct? I mean, you can't just do an air campaign and get away with it because they're doing an asymmetric warfare there. There's no structure there. There's no infrastructure. So how do you handle something like this at this point?
Well, let me tell you, you brought up air power. I can't tell you the number of times I just grimace when I hear some politician who's never served a day in uniform, doesn't have a clue about how warfare is conducted, to throw casually out, well, we'll just do airstrikes, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. They don't have a clue. An airstrike, it depends on what you're striking with. What kind of bombs? There are any number of tools in the kit bag of a commander tasked to carry out an operation. And it's up to the field commanders to come back with a plan that matches the national strategy. The problem we have here today, and I mean today, is this country, this administration, has no national strategy to deal with the threat. And the people in Washington are running around like Chicken Little with their heads cut off. It is unbelievable, stunning to me, stunning to a lot of people who spent the better part of their professional lives working in arenas that are involved with foreign policy, national defense, things like that, and take these matters seriously. But the frightening part is that you can't go on like this. Power abhors a vacuum. This administration has created an enormous power vacuum internationally that's being occupied by people who are not friendly to us. And it didn't have to be that way.
I have a question. regarding ISIL. ISIL was forming as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, remember? I think,
Yes.
I'm sure you clearly remember. Now, this is an offshoot. This is it's a group that's been forming for a long time. What would any administration do when you are looking at the northern part of Iraq that's dominated by the Sunnis there, almost creating a buffer zone between the Iranians and the Syrians there? It's very difficult to contain at that point when they're already there, and they have been fighting in Syria. Now they're moving into Iraq. And the way they moved in, and I'm sure you watching them from day one when they moved in from the Syrian north and took over Mosul. They got a lot of money out of there. It's a well-financed, extremely well-organized jihadist group. And I'm sure you studied a whole lot of them. I've studied a lot of them too. This is not an easy task for any administration the way it appears right now, because you're dealing with guys that are guerrilla fighters, asymmetric warfare. So how do we isolate them and how do we terminate them when they're in such a, they're worth about 1.2 billion at this point.
Well, it didn't hurt that they captured the bank in Mosul
And
with a good 400 million in it, we're told.
They looted a lot of the banks.
They looted a lot of the banks. That's where they got some of their money. This is a self-inflicted wound to this administration.
You don't think they saw it coming? Do you
They
think
didn't see it coming.
They didn't see it.
Or if they did, they ignored it, thinking that it would go away. You know, denial to some is a river in Egypt.
Because so you think they kind of turned the other cheek while these things happen?
They are so consumed with their domestic political agenda that they think these things will go away. The reason they think these things go away is they do have no experience in these matters, very little, and it's easy to ignore things, at least so you explain to yourself, if you don't have any experience. I'm told, and I believe, and it's on reliable hearsay, that the average age of the National Security Council in this administration is 29 years of age and a fraction, meaning less than 30. Now think about this, put this in perspective. You all these bright kids out of these wonderful colleges that have been taught by professors in the theory of a lot of things without real life experience, now tasked to formulate foreign policy for the United States of America.
But it's not one group or another. There's a lot of people out there that are forming this, and you know, we're
Not as
talking.
many as you think.
I know, and I see the younger factor there. We'll take a little break.
How about Susan Rice?
Yeah, she's
I
pretty.
mean, she's the head of she's the National Security Advisor. This council of youngsters reports to her.
Correct. Let me take a short break.
Sure.
We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.